that vision of not replacing people, but having every individual contributor in an organization, knowledge workers in particular, should not be working alone. They should be working with AI coworkers that they are delegating to.
Matt, thanks for being in the show today. So to get us started, we'd love for you to do a quick intro on yourself and kind of tell me how, as part of that intro, how that journey took you to Genesis.
Thanks for having us today. I'm Matt Glickman, co-founder of Genesis Computing. Launched going on 2.5 months ago. Before coming to Genesis, I joined Snowflake early days, led product early on, helped launch Data Marketplace, basically kicked off our industry practice in financial services, and really started to see over the past 1.5 years this real kind of two breakthroughs of AI, which had really become common knowledge, but also Snowflake becoming this viable platform for new companies and new applications to launch and reach basically a customer base they couldn't have reached before, and realized this was an opportunity to, given what we were hearing from customers that I was speaking to on a daily basis of trying to really break through this kind of cool demo, trying to do something real with AI, and leverage Snowflake as a starting place, really trying to make something real happen. But we saw it was like one of those things where we kind of knew too much, and we could sort of sit around and hope that people figure out how to leverage AI, how to leverage Snowflake in this kind of disruptive way of what we were going to end up building with Genesis of AI coworkers for the enterprise. Hope that would happen, and hope it happened in a way that would be empowering, and realize that my co-founder Justin Langstaff and myself had an opportunity to really accelerate this adoption and make this next generation of AI-powered apps on Snowflake a reality. In a lot of ways of what I saw early on when I first came to meet founders of Snowflake back in the day when I was at Goldman Sachs for many years, and after the financial crisis was looking for a data platform that could do, as it turned out, what Snowflake was trying to do. I didn't know about Snowflake at the time. Thankfully, as fate would have it, they came to pitch to Goldman in 2014, 2015. And I realized at that same moment that I could sit around and hope that the right thing happens and Snowflake becomes viable for Goldman, or I could kind of lean in and help make it happen and nudge it across. And so that was a very, very similar feeling that we kind of experienced. Just the main difference is that the pace of what's happening now is was taking years before is now taking months. And fast forward, 2.5 months, we're live on Marketplace, have customers, and really proving out what's now possible on this platform that I think is not even being appreciated, even in its full effect of now what you can do that you never could do before. Particularly getting into an enterprise as a startup is unprecedented.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned a couple trends of like things that made this happen, right? You kind of had this feeling back in the day when you first joined Snowflake, then you got to see Snowflake evolve into the platform that it is today. And then you were also seeing how the demand for Gen AI was coming, and there was just so much to build that there was someone that needed to build some of the extra things that weren't out of the box in Snowflake, which now brings me to the question of there's tons of stuff to do in the Gen AI space. Where's Genesis focused today, and how does that translate into tangible customer challenges and use cases that you're seeing as on this first wave, in this first 2 months or so that you guys have been working on this?
Crazy, it's only been that short amount of time. Yes, I guess this common thread that we were seeing was, as I mentioned, that everyone was doing these cool demos, which again, it's crazy how easy it is to do the cool demo. But I think everyone was starting to realize the limits of what it would take to actually turn that demo into something real. And particularly with this next rise of going from bare LMs to RAG to then agent, kind of powered systems that were actually taking action. It actually was becoming that much more tantalizing, but that much more complex in how do you actually create a framework where these systems will behave and not, sort of go off the rails. And that's really what we realized, that if we could deliver this coworker, knowledge worker framework as a native application that would basically allow everyone to start at that point and now focus on use cases. It would be a significant accelerator given how we were starting to see that was a non-trivial piece to build. And then using Snowflake as a way to get it out there. Number one. And number two is then take several key use cases and deliver them for real as working outcomes, right? It's one thing to deliver a set of Lego pieces and letting people assemble them themselves versus saying like, here's the Lego set, let me show you what you can build with it that are real production use cases. So we're doing both at the same time as part of this application, and really providing this as a framework, and effectively we're calling it an operating system that the application kind of is built upon, that is handling the deployment, handling the connectivity to your data and connectivity to other systems that allows these agent workers to actually perform their function. Lots of things we've accomplished in a short amount of time. I think we're only scratching the surface on where this technology can go. But for any of those doubters out there, the technology is real.
Yeah,
and very much so.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of talking. There's sort of a balance between like a platform and like being more tactical about to make things a little bit more tangible. And so I'm curious, as you bring your experience from financial services, the data space for a little bit, and then AI. How does that translate into like a specific use case that you guys are kind of focused on and started with as part of this first wave?
The challenge is trying to narrow it down because there's so many interesting use cases. The three that we will actually speak about today are the one, like you said, I'd be remiss to not include a financial services use case. So we have one of these personas, we've named him Armin as the financial services quant that is powered by Genesis. The second one is Marty. We actually showcased it at Summit, who is a marketing advertising manager. I've learned too much in the last couple months about maybe I'm sure you know more than I do, but the complexities of launching campaigns turns out is actually a very kind of manual task of connecting data of who you want to target to the actual kind of platforms. And again, it's a great use case for AI to make those connections. And then the third kind of branch of use cases, and the one particular one is what we call Janice, who's our Snowflake janitor. And this came up as a surprise of a lot of customers we spoke to were like that's all cool, but you know what I really need? I need someone who's going to clean up my Snowflake, and not just blindly, but smartly. Like find data that's not being used and alert that to me. Find copies of data that are being duplicated unnecessarily. Find stale data and notify me of that. So that's in some ways like a horizontal use case to go along with these kind of industry use cases. There's a never-ending set, but our goal is to take these a handful of these to market with the platform, and then allow our customers and also our partners to kind of build their own kind of custom, we call them Genbots, for their purposes. And then in each of those cases, and this again really doubles down on the value proposition of Snowflake, these get deployed into a customer's environment, right? We're packaging up, obviously we're building the system, but they get deployed and they're acting on the data, on the other systems. They can then learn about their environments in the Snowflake account that they're operating in. And that becomes an asset to the customer or partner who's using them in a very interesting, compelling way, and really kind of kicking off this AI worker economy where now this is not just a technology you're incorporating, but it's something where you're able to build up an asset that over time, sort of like how a human employee, as they grow in an organization, becomes more valuable because of what they know and who they know and all the skills. Now these AI coworkers are deployed and become smarter and an asset for that company that deploys them. Again, I think it's so many things that make this possible, but like that vision of not replacing people, but having every individual contributor in an organization, knowledge workers in particular, should not be working alone. They should be working with AI coworkers that they are delegating to, and not just in this kind of chat experience that we've kind of gotten accustomed to, where I don't want someone who I just have to tell things to, right? The same way I don't want a coworker who I have to tell things to, right? I want someone who I'm going to say things to, and they're going to go off on their own and do a better job than I imagined, and come back to me, when they have questions. or work with other AIs to kind of fulfill their task, but as an actual colleague. And what's the expression? An AI is not going to replace people. People with AI are going to replace other people. That is happening faster than I think any of us realize. Our job is to kind of make this happen as fast as possible.
Yeah, and I really like how you guys are executing against that sort of like AI co-worker vision as part of Genesis and make it into tangible use cases. We'd love to see kind of how those use cases look. Could we look at a demo of Genesis?
Yeah, awesome. We are live on Snowflake's Marketplace today. As you can see, we're highlighted here as the Genesis Bots application and available for anyone to try today. And basically in all AWS regions, we're available. You click and you go through an install sequence and you can basically meet the platform, but also some of the built-in Genbots that come with the platform. And the first one you get to meet is the Genbot we named Eve. And we basically realized that we wanted to make it where that you're using the product and the platform right out of the gate. So Eve is one of these agents whose job it is, and each of these Genbots have different jobs. And Eve's job is to help us and whoever installs our application to create the other agents and the other Genbots that they're going to work with. So that's her set of tools, right? And that's one of the key things, I guess, to ground with is that Genbots or agents in general are AIs that have access to tools. And the thing we realized that these AIs perform better at this stage, and I'd argue for, in the long run, perform better like people do when you have a specific function and a narrowed down set of tools to perform that function, right? Eve's job is to create other bots. Her job is not to do data analysis, her job is not to do marketing campaigns. That is her job. It also has the other benefit that people then understand when to talk with Eve versus another Genbot. So this kind of clarity works in both directions. So as you can see here, when you install the application, we're using Streamlit and Snowflake mainly as the admin panel. You can talk to the Genbots here as a built-in, but you can also configure their Slack connections, which data they can see out of the box, and just general, I guess, administration. But what we really realized is that if we're going to meet the users where they are, particularly the business users, where a lot of these use cases are involved, they may not have access to Snowsight, they may not even have access to Snowflake, but they will have access to communication platforms like Slack. So that's where we invested a lot of our time so far, is Slack as the way you interface with these Genbots, with these agents. But again, think of these agents as just someone who's performing a job function in your company. In this case, here's a couple of other ones. We have Eliza, who is our data engineer, and you'll see in a second, Janice, who is this janitor that I spoke about. And you basically would communicate with these as you would anyone else on Slack. And what we're aiming for is you shouldn't have to think about, I'm talking to an AI, right? I'm talking to someone named Eliza. She happens to be AI powered, but she will be able to do things that you'd expect from a data engineer. She has access to a Snowflake database, and then she has access to a semantic index of that data. And she'll now, when, in this case, Kevin asks a bunch, question about certain CyberSyn data, she'll find that data, she'll query it, and do some analysis on it, as you'd expect a data engineer to do. Kevin's not thinking about the fact that she is an AI, she just is. But interestingly, again, this is not a one-to-one kind of conversation. In this case, we find the data, in this case, this weather data, and then Kevin is able to kind of hand it off to Janice to say, okay, Janice, this is interesting data that I'm going to use now on with Eliza. Can you set up a process to make sure it's up to date every day so I don't have to think about, did I use it the wrong time? Did I use an incomplete copy? And then Janice takes over from there because her job, unlike Eliza, whose job it is to analyze data, Janice's job is to basically keep track and keep the data in an organized fashion in a Snowflake database. So she basically creates a process that she's going to run every day to see, that the row counts are the same every day. And then she'll then notify me whenever it changes. And then I start getting on a regular basis from Janice a Slack directed to me saying, hey, just so you know, this is how the data looks. It's stale, it's not, you need to take action. So she's going from having this kind of interactive conversation to going where we're pushing the limits on to be autonomous. Saying like, now Janice is going to every day wake up, check on the data or check on whatever tasks that she's supposed to do. and do her job as this data custodian that normally falls either between the cracks or it falls into, a DBA who doesn't want to do this as their full-time job. So that's sort of a meat and potatoes use case, but it turned out, the most popular use case so far is this kind of helping keep my data in place. But then staying with this, Slack as an interface, when I mentioned earlier, who's this financial quant, and again, this is only kind of teasing at what he's capable of, but I wanted to showcase how, without having to do any kind of special training, Armin understands some basic constructs of financial service risk management, which is understanding transactions or trades and positions and making sure that they're in sync. Because if you don't get these things right, none of the complex risk you do above that is going to work. In this case, I basically said, okay, Armin, I want you to reconcile these tasks, these data sets, so that I can do my calculations on top of that. So he goes and says, I'm going to create a task. I'm going to basically in this case, we actually had him create two tasks. One to actually purposely create an inconsistency, and then separate tasks to have him actually reconcile and rectify that. I didn't have to explain to him what these concepts meant. I didn't have to explain to him what reconciliation meant. This is, I think, the other misinformation out there is that you have to teach these AIs, basic constructs, right? These AIs out of the box are understanding the basic constructs of the industry, about data, about what a reconciliation is, and tool calling on how to act to fulfill this task. All kind of built in, but around the framework that we've put in place to make them perform in a stable fashion, but did not require custom models to do this. In this case, so the Armin task, he basically wakes up and says, I found an error in these data sets. And then he's able to go and make suggestions on how to rectify it, and then actually go and look at some of this data, make a suggestion on how to correct it. And in this case, he's suggesting, to change some of the transactions to match the position. But I then said, well, that's great, but I'd rather you do it the other way around, right? And then the important thing here is when he actually fixes that, he'll actually do it in a way where he'll then learn that this is the correct way to do this, so that going forward, he now has learned knowledge that the Armin from a day ago did not have. And this is, again, to our point earlier, this is not just kind of enabling AIs with a bunch of tools. This is enabling AIs in a secure environment that they can accumulate knowledge for that enterprise that it's working in, so that it's not only improving, but it's improving as an asset for that organization to use. And the last case, and again, infinite number of cases, but this is one we were very excited about that we talked about at Summit, and this is the marketing advertising manager use case, which is, as you're more familiar with, I've learned too much in the last few months about this, but basically is the campaigns that you want to launch and the platforms you launch them on is a lot of kind of manual process that's involved in tracking that and tracking the outcomes. And it's a very, very ripe use case for AI that allows you to understand that entire workflow and actually automate the workflow, but do so in a knowledgeable way, right? So in this case, we basically, gave Marty access to some customer segments that were prepared in this case by another Snowflake partner named Neuralift. And we basically said, here is the data about these segments. Suggest a campaign that we should launch given those segments. And by analyzing that data in Snowflake, Marty, because we've told him your job is to launch campaigns, he makes suggestions on how to do those campaigns. Says, okay, where can I launch that on? And in this case, he suggests Meta, Snap, or both of them. And he's not just talking this through. He's literally calling the tools behind the scenes to analyze the campaigns, analyze the data, and then we gave him functions to say, launch on Snap, launch on Meta. And then he takes those actions and then basically kind of gets the feedback to see, and we'll wake up every day and manage and say, did this succeed? Did this achieve the outcome we wanted? And then ideally, bubble that back up to the humans involved, who instead of having to manage these machinations, they're now working on this at a scale where they can say, is this working? Should we kind of give Marty, more of a budget, less of a budget, instead of having to worry about, kind of the intricacies? This one is particularly exciting, and I think we've got a lot of excitement about it because it sort of blends the technical with the business use cases. And we're going to take this, all the way to market, just because I think that'll kind of prove a lot of what's possible. And it's, media is an industry as a whole that's always eager to take advantage of new technology. And in this case, is something that would have been very hard to automate without AI in the middle. And yeah, but the possibilities are endless. But these are just three that we've been working on up to now.
Yeah, no, I really like seeing it in action, kind of how those conversations have a little bit of human in the loop, right? To make sure that they're calling the right tools before making a decision on their own. So really like that, which kind of brings me to what are some of the challenges in this whole thing? Each of those agents were touching data that maybe is private to an organization. How is building in Snowflake helping address some of those challenges, both in data access security, but also getting to production, which you mentioned demos are cool, but the value is when you get into production.
I smile because I'm always struck by the people who are starting in the consumer space and they think that they're going to just take whatever they get working in consumer space and just get it to work in the enterprise. As you know, it doesn't work that way, right? The enterprise is a very, very different kind of world where access matters. And, and at the same time, it's not like people are trying to break it. It just has to be done correctly. Correct answer, it needs to be correct. And in this case, we're leveraging Snowflake true role-based access control out of the box. Like, these bots run as Snowflake users, right? You permission them just like you would permission users. Like, there's no super user that is getting access to everything, right? You can even give each individual Genbot its own access control so that they can, again, if Marty's on the marketing team, he should have access to data like others in the marketing team. And if Janice has different access because she is cleaning up other data sets, she will, right? And it's all explainable, it's all auditable, right? It's done the way it should be done from first principles, right? These are AI coworkers. They should have access as you would empower human workers. And using Snowflake out of the box, there's no, you get that all for free. And more importantly, like, this is something that is manageable by the Snowflake admins who are controlling this. It's not a separate kind of access control. I have to think about what the bots can do versus what people can do, right? It's all done correctly. And it's something that is the same thing for humans as you would apply for these AI workers, and done right from the first time.
Yeah, you kind of highlighted something, which is just because it works in consumer space, you can easily just plug and play in enterprise. Any other advice that you have for AI builders kind of entering this enterprise space as we've seen that start to grow more in the last year?
I mean, the thing that struck me is that there's a very different incentive in the consumer space of what you have to worry about, or what's going to drive people and what's going to operate in the enterprise. In the consumer space, there's actually incentive to try to break these AI-powered systems, right? If you get Google, to say you should put glue on pizza, you have notoriety on TikTok, right? So there's incentive to break it. It's almost like you don't care if it's right, you just kind of don't want to be embarrassed if you're a consumer app with AI. In enterprise, it's exactly the opposite, right? Because you just need to be correct, right? And if someone inside an organization, I won't name an organization, but you think in your head about an enterprise who's going to be deploying Genesis or otherwise, if they're going to be inside an organization, enterprise, trying to break their AI system, there's going to be repercussions. And so that incentive alignment, where it's like, it's going to, you just need it's a better thing to focus on is correctness, not like, how do you prevent, saying something about glue on pizza? And I really think this is where everyone is going to start focusing. I think I give people credit who are going to try to hash it out in the consumer space. But I really think this is going to be something where enterprise is going to be where all the focus is on. These AIs, for reasons that are probably self-fulfilling, are all kind of getting better in these knowledge worker spaces. And if you're not kind of thinking from an enterprise first, standpoint, it's going to be a rude awakening, because these kinds of, like, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, not going to work. And that's why we spent a lot of time on how do we focus on correctness. And the way we've kind of set up the system, we don't want it to give answers, just answers, right? We say, like, if you have factual answers that you're going to give, go to Snowflake, right? bring world knowledge on process and like, what does a marketer do? Yes. But if I ask you for the interest rate as of a certain point in time, don't just try to remember it, right? Go to a database and look it up. If I'm asking you to launch a campaign, call the function and launch a campaign. Right? And I think this dramatically changes this hallucination problem, which is like if you're saying like, just give me answers like a person. If I put you on a spot, give me an answer, I don't care how you come up with it, you may or may not remember it correctly. Right? If I say like, I don't want just any answer, give me an answer that you can actually go and look it up, and I give you the tools to do that, hallucinations go away. So I think that focus on correctness and less of worrying about the guardrails of abuse is a very, very different kind of focus. And if you're in the consumer space focusing on that, it's going to be a rude awakening. But I would encourage anyone who's trying to decide where to focus, go to enterprise. It's the demand is so high. And think about it, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It has to be correct. But as long as it tells me, hey, I don't know how to do that, or I got an error when I did that, as long as you can give some kind of 20% improvement on process, 20% at the scale of how these organizations run is massive, right? And if that's the boost that AI gives, and again, if we can help do that, where you're not having to reinvent the wheel like people were trying to build snowflakes back in the day, just focus on your business process, right? We'll handle the kind of mechanism and the routing, but focus on what you want Marty to do, what kind of campaigns you want it to run, what kind of risk models do you want Armin to build, right? Those are the kind of things, and figure out what are the pieces that we need to add, what are the Lego pieces we need to add. But enterprises, I know it's self-serving, but more and more, I think everything is going to align where this is where AI is going to shine. This is where AI is going to show the kind of very, very clear returns, and it's going to sort of spiral from there. And we'll see how it goes, but I think it's super exciting time, and just the pace it's going to happen in is going to be like nothing I've ever seen, and it's only accelerating, right? And all these AIs and enough of them are now competing to kind of be this kind of raw power. We're just going to push them to the limits. And the combination of these AIs at the limits with Snowflake native apps as a distribution pattern to, with a single click, get safely into an enterprise's private data, and then have that AI become a valuable asset as it's learning how to operate in that enterprise. Exciting for us, but I think it's exciting for us all. And again, the partnership, is obviously, having been now on both sides of this virtual table, is super exciting, and we're gonna make things happen together in a way that I think is gonna help the entire industry.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. I truly on board with you, and that enterprise is sort of at this stage where they can reinvent a lot of the stuff they've been doing before, automate a lot more, and the value of 20% as a single consumer is a lot different than a $1 billion corporation. And so it's really exciting to see how all this is going to come together. Now, the question is, what if I want to try Genesis? How do I get started?
It's simple. Go to genesiscomputing.ai. Click there. You'll be able to launch directly from Snowflake Marketplace and install in any Snowflake account. AWS for now, but soon all Snowflake environments will have Genesis available. It's available for now for free. You'll be able to get started within minutes.
No, I like that. Getting started fast is definitely something that we like to see. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us today, sharing a little bit of your journey, kind of how you've been in the inside and now building in such an exciting space. And thank you for the advice you're giving to all these new enterprise AI builders that are coming today. Thanks for being in the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And of course, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to see more videos of AI builders showcasing their apps built right here in the AI Data Cloud.